Hi, it's Alistair from Electric Scotland. I'm doing this video. It's about Brexit, but it got me thinking because it's actually about Wales this time. And as you know, mainly I'm the historian for Scotland and for Canada, so that's where I focus most of my efforts. I take into account things that are happening in Britain. Bearing in mind that, bearing in mind that things that go on in Britain affect Scotland clearly. But I haven't really focused that much on Wales, although I do have the history of Wales up on Scots Diaspora section of the site, if you're interested in reading more. Anyway, the chap that wrote this particular article, you need to know who this was. It's a guy called Matt Smith. He's a lawyer and historian, and he stood for Parliament and the National Assembly for Wales. He was a policy analyst at Vote Leave. So, you could argue if he's, because he's a policy analyst, that doesn't mean to say he necessarily voted to leave the EU, but one can presume he probably was. But essentially there's some facts in here, and I call them facts because I don't think they can be disputed. I mean, maybe some of the interpretations can be disputed, but I don't think the actual facts can. And I was pretty gobsmacked when I read this article, I have to say. Basically, he's saying that there are good reasons to think Welsh Brexiteers were voting intelligently and in their economic interests. Wales's Leave vote helped to ensure the UK averts the serious economic risks of continued EU membership, including poorly drafted regulations, spiralling budgetary contributions, and fiscal harmonisation. More fundamentally, Wales is benefiting from the rebalancing of the British economy presaged by Brexit. Brexit gives UK government industry policy a renewed regional impetus. Greater engagement with the global economy benefits Wales' export sector. The sterling exchange rate has unlocked pro-growth factors. Brexit anticipates reform of the common agricultural policy and regional spending, and leaving the customs union will reduce the cost of living for Wales' poorest. Now, it goes on to say, UK government's industrial strategy is committed to ensuring all parts of Wales are match fit for Brexit. Prime Minister Theresa May wants more jobs in Wales, more exports of Welsh products, and more growth for the Welsh economy. And Trade Secretary Liam Fox is preparing an independent trade policy to help Welsh businesses make the most of new trade opportunities. Wales is ahead of any regional economy of England, with the value of its exports having increased by 19% in 2017. Significantly, Welsh exports to non-EU countries grew 21%. That's faster than the 15% growth in its exports to EU countries. So it looks to me anyway, as if the Welsh businesses are getting much more prepared for Brexit than perhaps they are in Scotland, for example. Basically it says Welsh exporters will also gain from trade deals with the faster growing and more populous economies of the world, which can be contemplated because we are leaving the EU customs union. Wales and the UK will continue trading with EU member states, But Wales' global connections are becoming more varied, stronger and enticing as we leave the EU. For example, after Welsh Secretary and Board of Trade Advisor Alan Cairns' trade mission to America, Robert Johnson, the US ambassador to the UK, said, "Wales as an important partner for the US. There is a significant amount of trade and investment between us, which is great news for workers in Wales and America." The Welsh office has also led major trade missions to Qatar in order to unlock Middle Eastern markets for Welsh businesses, and to Hong Kong, showcasing Welsh products and services to Asian markets. And remember here that the World Bank site, if you go to their site, you'll see a forecast that by 2050, the number one economy will be from China, number two will be India, and number three, the USA. So they're addressing the three major markets: Asia, which is China and India, and the USA. And they recognise the significance of the Middle East. And of course, if you read my news items recently, there was a very good article about Middle East and African countries doing well together. I said, despite geopolitical problems, there are huge resources available in both regions of the world that can make them the breadbaskets for tomorrow. It also notes, by the way, that Wales is attracting more foreign direct investment. More than 2,500 new jobs were created by inward investment in 2016-17 through 85 major investment projects. They've got a company called Global Welsh, which are encouraging entrepreneurs from the diaspora to invest in Wales, its future economic success. And the Welsh brand is promoted with renewed vigour, as it was in at Wales and London Week, during St David's Day celebrations, and at the Hong Kong Festival of Innovation. So when you start to read things like that, you think to yourself, Wales has really embraced this Brexit thing, and it is working hard to do well for its people, and it's recognising that the poorest in the economy can genuinely benefit from Brexit. There's lots of other stuff in this particular article, and I'll put a link to it so you can read it from the comments section. And I certainly encourage you to read it, because then I think what you have to then think is, well, if Wales is doing so well, why isn't Scotland doing as well? And I think the key to this is, I'll finish up by saying that Alan Cairns has described Brexit as a golden opportunity for us to recast our place in the world. It does now appear that the dragon spirits of Wales' real economy are soaring high as we prepare to go out into the world. And that's the point, out into the world. But I feel Scotland's missing a trick here. I don't think they have a clue on how to deal in the world. I once met one of the SNP people in Canada, and he said to me that the last time he visited he got nowhere with Canada, and he wasn't seen to get anywhere this time around. He just wondered what he was doing wrong. I think too much of it is my impression of Scots that visit Canada is they've always got their hand out. They want money, they want support, they want this, that, the next thing. But in reverse, they're never willing to give anything to get that. They want freebies from the world. They believe it's their right to get freebies from the world. And frankly, that's long gone. Scotland of today doesn't deserve freebies. It really doesn't. Scotland of old, 19th century and before, probably did. But current Scotland certainly doesn't. And I think that's the problem, because we've got a government that is not transparent and honest with us in Scotland. I mean, they're honest from the point of view, they say independence or bust. They genuinely don't care what happens to Scotland as long as it's independent. And they've said that enough times that I really believe them. That's a whole reason for being, is to get independence for Scotland. That means you cannot trust them, because everything they say is skewed towards independence. If they detect that by criticising something it might get them a few extra votes towards independence, they'll do it, regardless of whether it's good for Scotland or not. I mean, you could argue that our education was the best in the world by far at one time. Now we're just average. But you could argue the stupider we are, the more likely we're to believe the SNP. So the SNP has actually a vested interest in making sure we don't improve in education, because the more intelligent you are, the more likely you are to question what the SNP is saying. So they've actually got, it's actually in their interest to have a dumber population. And that's a terrible indictment to say to anyone, but it is. Anything that goes against the SNP, they won't reveal. I mean, they did their big survey, talk to us, was it? I can't remember what they called it now. They never ever released any results from that. Anything, and it can't have been good, because it was good, they just shouted it to the world, but it was bad, therefore they won't release any of the results. And they start to take some reports and decide, we're not going to bother issuing that. You know, we've heard it all before, it's not a difference. So, transparency and honesty with the SNP government, forget it. It just doesn't happen. They're not honest, they're not transparent. End of story. And that's why you can't trust them. And a vote for the SNP is a vote against Scotland. Scotland doesn't actually need independence to be successful. In fact, if we drop the independence and focus purely on managing Scotland for the benefit of everyone in it, we'd be much better off than we are today. Now remember, a lot of kids are going to school hungry. They haven't even had breakfast because the parents couldn't afford to give them breakfast. And that's gaps widening. Inequalities widening under the SNP, who are meant to be a left-winning party, as were Labour and the Lib Dems, left-leaning. It seems the more left-leaning you are, the worse off the poorest in our country get. But the poorest are the dumbest as well on the whole, and they can't understand that. They think, but should we voting left, we must look after us. I'm afraid history doesn't prove that. And that's the trouble. Most people don't get educated on historical things that happened in the past. I mean, it's like Donald Trump and, what's her name, Stormy Daniels. I mean, Kennedy was a massive womanizer. I mean, how many affairs he had, it was amazing. No one seems to want to talk about that. And that's why this world is skewed. The press are terrible. I mean, I remember talking to an old editor of the CBC in Canada. He'd been a news editor for some 38 years. He knew all the affairs the Prime Ministers and everyone else were having, but they never ever published them. Because as far as they were concerned, that didn't affect what they were doing in government. In fact, it might have even helped. But today, everything must be... I mean, frankly, I think that CNN, people like that, are pornographic in the extreme details. Like any shooting, CNN will spend the entire week doing nothing but getting every last drop of emotion out of the whole thing. And in so doing, they promote more mass shootings, because with a mass shooting, the more publicity you get, the better. So sure, if you want tons of publicity for your cause, kill a lot of kids. You're bound to get a ton of great publicity, and it'll last you for weeks. CNN, people like that, Washington Post, New York Times, I mean, all of them are left-leaning liberal entities, all hate Trump. But at the end of the day, look at what Trump's done. I mean, look at what he promised when he was going for presidency. Basically everything he's promised he's done, or he's attempted to do, or done his damnedest to do. He, more than any other president, has kept his word to his electorate. You've got to admire him for that. I mean, the other thing I can see, and this is where Scotland, I'd better get it right, because if he gets it wrong, it's going to suffer. And remember, no one owes Scotland a living. And remember the big markets, China, India, USA. These are the three massive markets. EU is in decline. I mean, that's just a fact. It's going, it's dead, and it's breaking up inside. The trouble is, no one reads the international news anymore. And that's a real problem. We don't understand what's going on in the world. But the EU, take it from me, is in permanent decline. So why we should even spending so much time talking about it, when 90% of all future growth is going to come from the Asian regions, India and China. That's where the future growth is, guys and gals. Learn about it. And then quite frankly, I think a lot of SNP voters were appalled at the SNP wanting to be in the EU, because a lot of them at least realised, having got independence, to join the EU meant we had to give up a lot of that independence to join them. I mean, look at the named person scheme. Championed by the SNP, championed by our judges, only to be found it contravened the Security Act within the EU. And unfortunately, our stupid Scottish judges didn't know enough about the EU regulations to recognise that. That's why I went to the Supreme Court of the UK, and they luckily recognised the conflict and had to drop the policy. Because it, I think it was, I remember rightly, it was freedom of information, the right to privacy. And the SNP wanted to get rid of all privacy. They say anything you do, the state should know about. The state. Signs of the Third Reich, I would suggest there. But let's be honest, Wales looks like a really positive one. It shows how a devolved country within the UK can do absolutely great. Whereas a devolved country like Scotland is doing lousy. Why? Because the SNP want independence, and everything they do is to that end. And if they think they can hurt Westminster and therefore improve their own position, they'll do it. Because all they care about is Scotland. And it's not a good Scotland or a bad Scotland, they just want independence. Could they care less if we're successful or not as an independent country? No, they actually couldn't. And we're getting more unequal every year of the SNP government. I mean, look at it. Education. The worse educated we are, the more likely we're to believe the SNP. That's just a simple fact. Stupid people don't understand arguments. Our National Health Service, run by a numpty who happens to be a great mate and loyal backer of Nicola Sturgeon. But who else in the SNP could run that portfolio? They don't have anyone. They're all idiots, or they're all clones of everyone else. No one stands out in the SNP. They're all Me Too kind of people. They're all the same. They're not allowed to speak for themselves. Therefore there's no visionaries, no personalities, or anything. So only once they come out of the SNP can they talk more freely. And then, to be honest, look at our justice system. It's a disaster. Our judges don't even know what they're doing half the time. Really bad justice system. Police Scotland. The SNP's desire for centralisation of everything is costing us a fortune. Bad advice. They don't take advice from anyone other than SNP supporters. So basically the strive for independence and the fact that independence is a majority in supporting government in Scotland means Scotland's doing terrible. Wales is an example of a good devolved government. Yes, they have independence people, members in there, but they're by no means the majority. and therefore people are focused on performing for Wales, and that's good. That's what we need in Scotland, and we ain't got it, unfortunately. But I wanted you to see how a devolved country within the UK is doing really well and is looking to do even greater in the years ahead as we come out of the EU in favour of Brexit. So I want you to realise that, you know, because we're a devolved country doesn't mean to say we can do good or better. It depends on the people that lead us in the devolved country. And remember, Scotland's got more devolved powers than almost any other part of the world. In fact, they've got more devolved powers than many independent countries of the world, for that matter. But you know, this. I don't know. I just say you just can't. I mean, if you're an intelligent person, you cannot trust the SNP. End story. But you can trust that they want independence and they'll do anything they can to get it. Whether that's in Scotland's interest or not is immaterial. Independence is their goal and the reason they were born and the reason that they're in the SNP. They want independence and they couldn't give a damn what happens to the country as long as we're independent. And I just think that's awfully wrong. So that's why I wanted to bring this Welsh story to you, because here's another devolved nation within the UK that's doing great and looks to do even better because they're focused on their people and their genuine improvement in what's going on there. And I'm going to do a bit more research on Wales just to balance this article up. But certainly they look at a shining example of what's possible as against the dour, defeatist attitude of Scots, to be honest with you. Okay, so anyway, that's me kind of whittered on quite a lot, but I did want to highlight that just because you're a devolved nation doesn't mean to say you can't do well. Okay, thanks for listening, and please make any comments you want. Look forward to hearing from you.